Announcing my pregnancy triggered my sister-in-law's poison plot. However, it backfired, sending her husband to the hospital, her to jail, and destroying her marriage. I, 29F, have been married to Harry for the past 7 years. I love every aspect of our marriage, with the exception of his relationship with his sister Kayla, who brings negativity into our lives. Don't get me wrong, I was in love with Kayla when I first met her, but as time went on, I quickly had a different opinion. She is extremely negative, nasty, and manipulative. I have put a lot of effort into being on her good side over the years because I know the kind of person she is. When he was 17, my husband dated Sil's best friend. However, they ended their relationship because he felt pressured to be with her because of Sil. When he turned 23 and found out he was unmarried, his sister suggested he and another acquaintance of hers should be together. However, he didn't agree. During their epic struggle, she sobbed to their parents about wanting him to marry someone she felt comfortable with, but they barely paid attention. His parents were quite supportive when my husband and I first met and fell in love, but Sil was always unfriendly to me. Whenever I was around, she would inexplicably bring up Harry's ex-girlfriends, telling him how well they were doing and offering to put him in contact with them. This went on for a while. This struck Harry as odd as well, and he would ask her to refrain from bringing up his ex-partners. It wasn't only me that noticed this. Sil would then become upset and begin making fun of me, saying that Harry shouldn't be with someone like me and that I was envious. Every time Harry's parents called us for dinner, Sil would purposefully invite one of his ex-boyfriends, claiming she had accidentally encountered them that day and had to respectfully ask them. Although she doesn't follow me, she frequently looks at my Instagram. She is typically the first person to view my stories because I have a public account. If a male made a remark about my photo, she would then go to her brother and complain about me posting obscene pictures of myself. In fact, Harry and I would laugh at her assertions. When Harry and I decided to live together, she convinced him to leave me, claiming that I was a flawed woman and that she could find someone much better. This remark truly hurt me because I had only ever been nice with her. Unfortunately, the moment Harry and I became engaged, Sil's behavior of me deteriorated even further. When Harry and I announced our engagement, everyone began cheering, but I noticed Kayla was a little reserved. Then, to everyone's surprise, she leapt from her seat and departed our assembly. She later called Harry and sobbed and yelled that she didn't want to hear the news with everyone else because she was the one closest to him and should have been the first to know he was engaged. She had always been the sole woman in her brother's life, so she later sent me a note that was almost threatening, telling me how I should treat him. The weird message almost made me cry. I didn't even bother to reply to her message, which I know must have enraged her even more. Sil began to gradually ignore me whenever she saw me. For whatever reason, she continued to be involved in every aspect of the wedding planning, including my bridal shower and dress shopping. She was repeatedly called out on it by my fiancé and future mother-in-law, but her criticism of the wedding took it to a whole new level. She openly voiced her displeasure with my choices. Her behavior continued. Kayla heard me discussing the centerpiece with my future mother-in-law one day. She immediately began to ridicule me, saying that my choice lacked sophistication and that this was the reason she wanted her brother to marry a better man. That, for me, was the decisive moment, and I lost control. I shouted at her that I could no longer put up with her constant criticism and teasing, and I made it clear that she was no longer invited to our wedding. Even my mother-in-law, who supported me, was furious with Kayla, who was shocked and gasping in astonishment as though she had never anticipated me challenging her. Kayla later got in touch with Harry, complaining that I had made her feel ashamed and urging him to keep me under control because I would be his wife. Harry was adamant that he agreed with my decision and that if she didn't atone, she wouldn't be allowed to attend the wedding. She reluctantly sent me a heartfelt apology via text. I left it on read again after seeing it. I didn't want anything to do with her drama because I was already exhausted from getting ready for my wedding. In the end, she came to our wedding because I didn't want her to later judge us. Following the pastels and pink hues selected for my wedding appeared to be easy for everyone, including the guests. However, Sil showed up wearing a black, veil-covered floor-length gown that gave the impression that she was going to a funeral. We were, to put it bluntly, taken aback. Sil paid everyone a visit and expressed her sorrow at losing her brother to a different woman. Sil expressed dissatisfaction with her wedding dress to my hubby. She asserted during the reception that I was overly controlling and that she was free to wear anything she wanted. Her goal was to play the victim. My father-in-law and mother-in-law finally gave her the order to go after she continued to make a scene all the time. For me, it was embarrassing. I have avoided her ever since that day. When I gave birth to my son, Nate, I prohibited Sil from being near our child. My husband's parents supported me despite her attempts to reject it. They understood why I wanted Sael away from my baby and backed my decision. 2 years ago, Yael and her ex-boyfriend Jaimie had a miscarriage, which completely devastated her. That was a really gloomy time for everyone. Harry and I felt sorry for her because we were already parents. We decided to be a little more forgiving. We would invite her to our home after her miscarriage because she could relate to our child, Nate. In spite of her actions toward me, she has been surprisingly kind to our son. She initially appeared to have transformed, but with time, she reverted to her previous appearance. She frequently complains about how hard her life is, how nothing ever seems to go her way, and she holds bosses or former pals responsible for her problems. Over time, I've come to realize that she's always right. She rarely admits her mistakes in confrontations and is constantly trying to win people over by playing the victim. This year, she decided to tie the knot and asked everyone to come save us. Harry was shocked to hear that we weren't invited because our relationship looked to have improved. She started out by explaining that I would disrupt her wedding, which is why she won't let me attend. Having never done anything to her, I called her and asked her why she would think that when we questioned her about it. After Sael explained that she had purposefully worn all black to our wedding, she became concerned that I may follow suit, which is why she wanted me to leave the premises. I was honest when I told my wife how manipulative she was. Harry was furious about it and, after talking to his parents, made the decision to inform Sael that they would not be attending the wedding or covering the costs. This made Sael cry, and she started blaming me for causing this catastrophe. Her husband informed her that since she had readily acknowledged her own mistake, she had no right to blame me. However, Kayla justified her actions by saying that since our wedding was so long ago, I should just move on. Since Phil and Mill were still not paying for her wedding, she later got in touch with me to repent and beg for my forgiveness. I hate to admit it, but when Kayla wants something, she can be really charming and convincing. I wanted to forgive her and move on from the past. Her marriage to Jaimie was a blissful marriage. We all turned up and enjoyed ourselves. Kayla showed up at our door complaining about her failed marriage not even 6 months later. Harry and I allowed her to remain with us for a few days, during which time she would spend countless hours complaining about her husband. They seemed to be having trouble becoming pregnant, and Kayla was clearly holding Jaimie responsible for everything. I went to talk to Kayla, but she insisted that her husband was solely to blame. When she wasn't complaining about her spouse, she would be too preoccupied with our lives and attempt to make things that didn't exist. For example, I often go to the gym every morning before leaving for work. I sometimes reach for my work clothes when I'm running late so I can get my workout done, take a bath, and change into my business attire. For a while, Sael noticed this and would ask me a lot of questions, such as why I was taking a bath or why I even needed to go to the gym. I didn't think much about it, and I would tell her that I loved maintaining my weight and that I didn't mind going to work sweaty. She would lick her lips and nod. Mill told us about a friend of hers going through a divorce. After finding out that her friend's husband had cheated on her, she left him at lunch and took half of his possessions. Sael quickly halted her to inquire if my husband and I had a prenuptial agreement before we got married. We stopped to look at her. We ceased our meal. She looked hopefully at my husband, as though I hadn't even come yet. Since he and I both made a respectable living and didn't see the need for a prenuptial agreement, my husband told her bluntly that he doesn't mince things. Sael snorted and went on to add that cheaters are common in today's world and that he could be caught off guard at any time. I was offended by her remarks. So I asked her to be more specific about what she meant. Then Sael started to say that I was clearly meeting someone because I always had a change of clothes with me, and that it was her responsibility as Harry's sister to alert her brother. I found these comments to be surprising. She was immediately saved from continuing to make up similar stories by Phil and Mael, who also told her not to meddle in other people's business. Without missing a beat, Adil reiterated that she was merely attempting to support her brother and started to make jokes about whether our son Nate was really Harry's son because he didn't look like him. I swear I saw my husband's face turn red with anger. I had never seen him so furious in my life. He told Kayla, looking her in the eye, that her child would be happier in paradise than with someone like her and that she was not yet a mother because she did not deserve to be one. Kayla's mouth hung open in shock. My husband left, and Mael and Phil just watched in silence. Kayla was just a loser, whining that she was a blatant individual who was attempting to ruin things since she had nothing to offer. He told her that although her husband worked non-stop, she did nothing all day. He insisted that she should concentrate on her own marriage rather than accusing me and inquiring about prenuptial agreements because she was obviously projecting. Kayla broke down in tears and started to scream. She turned to Jaimie, who was sitting right next to her, expecting him to comfort her, but he remained silent. My spouse never has such a mental breakdown. At last, she rose from her seat and hurried into the bathroom. My hubby was furious. Mill came to soothe him after I caressed his hand. I nodded as he apologized for his sister's remarks about our boy, realizing how bothersome she could be. I was a little happy that my husband was publicly defending me because I had endured enough abuse from Kayla over the years. After he calmed down, he apologized to Jaimie but completely ignored Kayla. After lunch that day, we went back to not talking to Kayla. Her behavior was affecting not just me but also my husband. We just blocked her access to everything so she could contact us. Following lunch, we had a conversation with Mil and Phiel, who concluded that Kayla had overreached this time. They could see how Kayla's persistent pushing had caused their normally quiet son to go crazy. Since our last conversation with her a year ago, everything has been going smoothly. I found out I was pregnant 2 months ago. This was rather surprising considering how little we had worked. My spouse and I are fortunate to have welcomed a new family member. While we waited for the right time, we made the decision to inform everyone on my husband's birthday. Miel and Phil were hosting a lavish gathering in their lawn as a way to commemorate Harry. Our close friends and family were invited. After learning about this from others, Esil decided to reveal her identity. My spouse and I stumbled when we spotted her. Esil apologized for their last conversation and came to embrace Harry, telling him how much she had missed him. My spouse took my hand and told his sister to apologize to me for pointing fingers at my character. After giving me a quick glance and nodding, Esil apologized. She told me that she had been going to therapy for the past few months and realized that her treatment of me was unacceptable. I wanted to be courteous to her in front of everyone because this was a gathering for my husband, so even though I didn't agree with what she said, I nodded. Since they were unaware that she would be coming, Mil and Phil checked in on us and told us that if we felt uncomfortable, they would throw her out. But Harry was determined not to make a scene. We therefore chose to overlook this. Sel was laughing and mingling with everyone during the party, so it seemed odd. Even though she seemed unduly upbeat, which is not at all her style, I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt because she had mentioned seeing a therapist. In a heartfelt speech, Harry expressed his gratitude for another year with a woman like me and said he felt he was the luckiest guy alive. His comments made me blush with joy, much like we did when we first started dating all those years ago, when it came time to cut the cake. My husband and I were still deeply in love, and I couldn't help but cherish it. Then Harry and I decided to share some amazing news with the world. Everyone paused to think, then let out a cheer as we announced that we were expecting a baby. As Phil toasted Harry and me, my mother came running up to embrace me and broke down in tears. His face was wet with tears. Everyone was obviously happy for us and wanted to know if we had decided on baby names. The only hurting thumb that was noticeable was Sil. She appeared astonished. Her attitude shifted, and she just turned away from us, seeming annoyed. I reasoned that perhaps she was taking her time processing the information. I was distracted by other people coming to talk, but I was a little worried that she would spoil another party for us. Rick and my parents pleaded with me to remain seated, telling me that I shouldn't even move at this time, but I got up to help my in-laws carry lunch. I was sitting quietly waiting for my husband to bring me some food when Esil came over, grinning. Lively expressed her excitement about my pregnancy by saying that she personally wanted to offer me dinner. She gave me a plate. She even expressed her desire to make up for all of the unpleasant things she had done to me in the past as she handed me the plate. I gave a courteous nod of approval. Then she turned to leave. Fortunately, she added shrimp to my meal just as I was about to start eating. I am aware that I have a severe allergy to shrimp. I was therefore taken aback that Esil even brought me this. I shook my head in disappointment and went to get my own lunch. At that moment, Jaimie came up to me and wished me luck during my pregnancy. He asked me why I hadn't been eating after we had a little talk. I pointed out that Esil had served me shrimp, most likely by mistake, but Jaimie assured me that it was nothing to worry about and took the dish away from me. He informed me he could have this dish because he liked shrimp. I could get myself a new plate. I smiled, nodded, and turned away. 5 minutes later, not even 5, Jaimie started to throw up and vomit all over this dish. Everyone paused their meal in concern as they saw him stumbling out of his chair. Harry and Kayla ran to him in concern. Jaimie made motions toward his plate and then his throat. When we recognized that what he had eaten had undoubtedly caused something to go wrong with him, our eyes widened in awe. Jaimie clearly fainted. Everyone then let out a gasp of surprise and concern. Kayla's eyes widened in horror as she rushed to inspect his food. She looked at me and asked if I had given my plate to her husband. I gave a nod. He was sent to the hospital when someone in the chaos called for an ambulance. Kayla was crying uncontrollably and looking at me viciously during this entire ordeal. Later on, we learned that Jaimie had been poisoned. Hearing this, I almost fainted, knowing that the dish had been mine in the first place. Unbeknownst to Harry, Phil, or my parents, Jaimie's consumption of what may have poisoned me and my child is horrifying. He fainted in this way, and no one knew what was in the food he had eaten. To obtain proof from it, the police were called. As I write this, Jaimie is still recovering in the hospital. Kayla spent the night with him, and my husband and I are taking calls from family members who want to know what happened to Jaimie and who may have poisoned him. Mil and Phil are shook by what has happened and are staying at our place since they are afraid to go back to their own. What happened so suddenly while everything was going so well is unknown. I'm really scared to tell people that the plate was originally mine and how Kayla came to give it to me. If this turns into an investigation, I'll have to be honest with the police. Above all, I'm now a little worried about what my SIL might do to me. I feel really bad about what has happened. She clearly has no inhibitions about trying to poison me, so I don't want to be around her and I can't bring my kids near her. I regret giving my food to Jaimie and perhaps tainting my bill. First update. Whoa. We appreciate that this post received thousands of comments in a few of hours. It never occurred to me that I would get that many responses. My hands were shaking when I typed this earlier. I've had trouble falling asleep. I definitely feel somewhat responsible for the incident with my bill, despite what everyone says. I ought to have just thrown the dish away. Why I allowed him to take it from me is beyond me. I know something is wrong, and I can't stop crying about his future. Even though my husband is unaware of what I know about his sister, he has been lingering near me. He thinks I'm just concerned. Though I'm not sure if everyone will believe me, I agree with the statement that I should sit down and speak to everyone politely. Security cameras are installed throughout the house by Mil and Phil. Since this birthday event was held in their backyard, I'm sure they could use their camera to verify that Kayla gave me the plate. I'll update after talking to everyone tonight. Update 2. After that, we talked, and I'm glad to have the kindest in-laws in the world. Since Mil and Phil are already staying with us, I decided to have dinner with Harry and them to communicate something important. I started by taking a deep breath as the situation's weight sagged on my shoulders. Everyone gathered in one place. I described the happenings of the birthday party, such as how Jaimie became ill after inadvertently eating a plate of prawns that Escalate had given me. As I spoke, their astonishment and disbelief mirror my own. With obvious concern, Mil and Phil exchanged glances. Harry's expression changed from doubt to fury. I continued by voicing my worries regarding SIL's motivations and previous attempts to harm me. I was hesitant to share this information because of the potential consequences for both our newborn child and myself. Mil, being the practical woman she is, suggested immediately viewing the security camera footage. Despite being visibly irritated, Phil nodded in agreement given the seriousness of the situation. Harry remained silent to take in the shocking revelation. The truth was undeniable after looking at the surveillance footage from their camera app. The video depicts what transpired to cause Jaimie's agony after SIL gives me the poison plate. There was no room for ambiguity due to the weight of the data. Emotions ran high as the realization set in. Harry struggled to contain his anger now that he was fully aware of his sister's malicious aim. Mil and Phil were appalled by their daughter's actions and were shocked by the lengths she had gone to in order to cause trouble. We sat in stunned silence, trying to understand why she would do this. My in-laws have decided to send this information to the police because it is a very serious matter. Jaimie must file charges against SIL as a result of this disclosure. As a result, once he heals, my husband and Phil will be going to see him. Every time I think of how I gave Jaimie my poisoned dish, I want to cry. I'm not sure how Jaimie will respond. I can't sleep or eat well because I am so worried about him. I'll notify you of anything significant. Update 3. Okay guys, I know it's been a month since my last update, but I'm finally here with another one. I'm a pregnant woman going through a lot right now. First of all, she was in custody. My in-laws gave the police the recording when they had seen the evidence. Kayla immediately acknowledged everything and made no effort to refute the allegations. She broke down in tears. When my husband told Jaimie what had happened, he was as shocked as the rest of us, but he assured him that he would always be a part of our family no matter what he chose to do. Since this was such a wicked thing to do, my husband suggested that he file charges against his sister. After Jaimie got better, he decided to file charges and get a divorce. Kayla called her mother-in-law and father-in-law, pleading with them to forgive her. Kayla is actually expecting a child of her own. She pleaded with them to save her, telling them that they should do this for their granddaughter's sake in an attempt to exert control. However, Phil forcefully told her that they were done pampering her and that she should finally learn to take responsibility for her actions. Despite her sadness for her daughter's situation, Mil understands that her behavior cannot be easily overlooked. The police found evidence that she had tampered with the meal in an attempt to harm me, which backfired and injured her husband. She has been accused of a number of crimes, including endangering life, inflicting harm, and compromising integrity by tampering with food. Kayla had been begging Jaimie not to charge her, claiming that this was all my fault anyhow. Luckily, Jaimie is determined to punish her. Her hearing in court is about to start. I don't think she can get away this time. I'm doing fine, as is my son. He has no idea what his aunt has done, despite everyone asking him in the interim. We want our youngster to be aware of these situations and steer clear of them. Harry and I have thus talked about it, and we do plan to have a conversation with him and be honest with him. It will be difficult yet necessary to have a difficult but crucial conversation with a young child. I also have regular ultrasounds every 2 weeks for my pregnancy as directed by my doctor. We don't plan to find out the child's gender since we want her to be a surprise. And my parents have been a little protective of me because they know what has happened to Kayla. They are worried that this would jeopardize my mental health during the pregnancy, so they are pushing me to get help. I agree with them since, despite my typical behavior, I have a deep-seated fear of what Kayla did to my food, which makes me avoid eating anything I haven't prepared myself or anything from outside. Given his awareness of it and his unwavering support, I'm hoping my spouse can assist me in overcoming this irrational fear. Update 4. It has been 8 months since my last check-in. Kayla is currently incarcerated. I never attended her court proceedings, but she was found guilty of the charges. My in-laws would sometimes tell me how Kayla came clean to the court and confessed to being envious of me for years. My husband's marriage to one of her closest pals had long been her desire. Because she didn't want an outsider to marry her brother, she would constantly try to bother me when he started dating me. When we announced our pregnancy to my husband's birthday party, she felt envious because she was also planning to announce her own pregnancy. She thought we took away her chance to shine, but she wanted to share her amazing news because she had miscarried once. Her pregnant hormones caused her to get so angry that she added a small amount of rat poison to my dinner. She claimed she didn't want to physically harm either myself or the baby, but she did want me to end up in the hospital. She claimed that because I practically poisoned her husband and she never anticipated me to hand her husband my plate, she should receive a lighter sentence. The judge responded to her pleas, of course. She was imprisoned and will be absent from our lives for a long time. Since she has essentially divorced him, Jaimie is also finally free. Over the months, we have seen him and continue to include him whenever possible in our family gatherings. When we chatted, he told me that I was never at blame, and I really apologized to him for giving him my plate. And I broke down when I heard that I had been mentally practicing it and hoping I could have done anything else to prevent him from being poisoned. I'm glad Jaimie is doing well at the moment. In terms of Harry and me, we recently welcomed a baby daughter into our home. Despite the lingering shadows of the past, our daughter's presence has brightened and warmed our lives. Our son Nate is thrilled to be a big brother and has shown his affection and concern for his younger sister. We learn to appreciate things when we watch our children interact. Throughout this new stage of our lives, my parents and in-laws have supported and guided us. I appreciate you watching. Please hit the notification bell and subscribe if you haven't already in order to receive updates on more startling real-life stories that are happening in your area.